Hello everyone. I hope you all had a good reading week. My name is Asmat, and that's my partner for this project, Bora. And today we'll be presenting on the topic of safety standards, which is chapter 7. And the paper we've decided to present on relates to issues of industrial production, environmental safety in the modern 21st century economy. And to give you an overview of what we will be discussing, first we will go into an introduction of the topic, and then we will discuss some materials and methods required for ensuring the environmental safety standards are met. And then we will discuss some of the key themes within the research paper, and then go into some practical takeaways for businesses and governments. Diving into the introduction, what do we mean by production greening? Basically, production greening refers to really breaking down manufacturing processes into its various components and turning them to low waste processes and low waste processes that are very much environmentally friendly, but the main focus is on waste reduction and waste recycling, and it is essential for achieving environmental safety and sustainability, which we will talk about later on. And as I said, the a main focus of production greening is on the utilization of secondary raw materials, which would otherwise be waste, but then now taking the waste and uh, putting them again into the production cycle. And uh, as such, in this process, waste processing is very important. And it's also a leading industry in developed countries where this results in an ecological conversion of production, which is not detrimental to the environment and actually takes waste out of all these waste bins and turns them back into products.
So we're gonna have different research stages all for this presentation. So we're gonna start with studying principles of green production while taking environmental perspective into account, as well as we're gonna study aspects of green production in European and CIS countries for a comparison between the main countries, which is basically the Republic of Tatarstan, and we're gonna draw conclusions from how their production technologies differ with the European Union and CIS countries. We're also going to be studying the relationship between expenditure levels of industrial and environmental productions and the level of environmental damage in the areas. So this refers to different areas in the Republic of Tatarstan. And secondly, we're going to look at measuring expenditure levels on environmental safety, measures taking into account financial stability and market orientation of these industries.
Okay, so to go into the materials and methods that are sort of tools at the disposal of institutions to pursue industrial greening and green productions, there are essentially five factors for greener production, which are economic restructuring, high closed production, technological re-equipment, innovative products, and better waste collection. And as you can see, these factors, they all go in tandem with each other and collectively push organizations towards more environmentally safe and sustainable production processes. To dive a little bit deeper, by economic restructuring, what it means is that for the economy, in order to minimize waste, it has to basically change its approach to how a lot of uh, high waste industries operate and be in the search of alternatives, which means that a lot of resources could be poured into the research and development of low waste alternative to high waste industries. And at the same time, another point of focus for economic restructuring could be really figuring out what are the most hazardous materials that are being used in the production stage that leads to high waste products, and trying to eliminate them and similarly find alternatives for them. And what we mean by high cost production is that waste recycling and usage of recycled waste for use as secondary materials. And this can be achieved by really multiple producers and sectors coming together in a multi stakeholder partnership to really see how they can turn the waste that their production processes produce into products, perhaps for other industries, to make the whole production process much cleaner and more cooperative and a low waste industry. And beyond that, this sort of partnership presents challenges of itself, which relate to mainly to logistics and getting these entities to cooperate with each other in such a process. Beyond this, technological re-equipment would also be very important factor to in production greening, because leaps in technology can really help drive high waste industries towards efficiency and sustainability, to make sure that through the use of these newly developed low waste technologies, whole production processes can get a lot better rather than smaller steps to tackle challenges along the way. And it could also be useful in controlling for economic and technical aspects of production greening, to make sure that everything moves as efficient and as effective as possible. And more than that, all of this could also then lead to introduction of more innovative products, and products that would firstly be produced through low waste production methods, but then also have longer life cycles and be designed and produced in ways that they could be returned for production after they are obsolete.
So another factor is better waste collection. This is basically summarized by increased levels of cleaning of industry waste. What we mean by this is basically we're going to try using more efficient technologies for collection and disposal of waste after the production process. Obviously, this is going to be more beneficial for the environment as well. So in this slide, we're going to explain how the paper measures the production greening process. Specifically, they have a function which measures the effect of production greening. And this takes into account the 5 factors we just discussed. So basically, the function consists of CISP, CMWR, TRP, RNTP, and IPWT. These are all acronyms for changing industry structure of production, cooperation manufacture of waste recycling, technological re-equipment of production, release of new types of products, and improvement of production waste treatment. So these are what these shortcuts are referring to. So this is the function the paper uses for measuring the level of production greening. Basically, it's seen as echo as a function of CISP, CMWR, TRP, RNTP, and IPWT. What is important is that the purpose for this function is to have a better picture of the industrial ecosystem and providing a toolkit for modeling and implementing the production greening process for different sectors, industries, as well as to assess the effectiveness of current environmental management practices. So the information base of this paper is divided into 2 parts. So the goal is to research processing enterprises of all production industries. This takes into account chemical production and plastics and rubber production. For where the paper looks at areas in the Republic of Tatarstan. These areas differ in technological development, environmental management, and financial stability, as well as the ability to use innovative processes.
So, with a focus on the oil production industry, 3 sort of main themes that emerge through this paper is the relationship between industrial production and sustainable development, and the production greening process, as well as analyzing the issue through an environmental purpose expenditure and seeing financial capabilities of certain enterprises. So, first of all, to start with industrial production and sustainable development, the paper discusses this subject and divides sort of the obligations of industrial producers into 2 different categories, which are satisfying society's needs, meaning that providing society with products that they need at the prices that that those products would sell in the market, and in ways that those products really satisfies the needs of customers. But another aspect of their obligations is to also maintain the level of natural capital, especially non-replenishable resources, to make sure that they're used in the most effective and efficient manner, which if we apply an economic lens to sustainable development, well, economists look at look at sustainable development through the Hicks-Lindell theory of maximum total income flow, which this concept includes the four components of a rational use of resources, high-tech equipment, environmentally friendly products, and waste minimization and recycling. And as you can see, these four aspects are very much correlated with what the process is for industrial greening. So to ensure that, so this is just testament to the fact that industrial greening and sustainable development goals, they all go in tandem to ensure environmental safety and sustainability in the future. And going into the environmental greening model and how it's the implementation of these five factors that you see on the left side, what would they lead to, and what would be the framework to really bring about these changes? So first of all, as a beginning step, first the criteria and the context for what are the indicators and how is basically production ecologization measured, and how would its efficacy and its efficiency be taken into account. And once the determinants factors are set, they should be monitored, and these factors should be monitored constantly over time to see how they change, and if they don't change, what are the results? What are the results of these changes? And if they don't change, what are the factors behind these indicators not changing? And then moving into analyzing these indicators to really identify if there are any relationships between aspects of production greening, and then using this data and analysis to make economic and engineering decision about production processes and optimize them along the way. And if, as a last step, there is any corrections needed, the last step of the process focuses on taking corrective action after the fact of seeing how a certain industrial greening project goes. And in terms of its implementation, production greening processes are really large-scale technological transformation and investments, which means they could be done through organizations internally, which is something we will dive into shortly, or they could be done through government stimulus packages that really help transform economies in general. And this has been seen through stimulus packages, and also through the commitments and influence that the OECD, or the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, has mandated its members, and what the members have really signed on to bring about these transformations and investments, and to make sure that industrial greening is something that actually happens. But the constraints here are that a majority of companies and private sector entities, they have not really transitioned to green production yet. And from the small minority that are trying to take steps towards green production, there is a cost and effect lag where all these expenditures are being made, but the effects will be felt and seen in the futures, which then prompts us to really focus on more proactive investments in the area of production greening. And based on the research done in this paper, there is a positive correlation coefficient of 0.35 between the growth of environmental expenditure and environmental improvement, meaning that when more resources and money is spent on environmental expenditure, it is proven that the environment in general will improve within any context that the resources are being spent. And another aspect that we could focus on is the environmental purpose expenditure from a more so market orientation and financial stability of internal private sector entities. So from this perspective, we can divide the private sector entities into three different types of enterprises, where the first type would be focused on their own environmental safety to make sure that their brand is associated with environmental progress. And these are companies that are competing in international markets, so they also have to comply with international standards, and it's sort of environmental expenditure and action is part of their requirements, and they don't these systems and certifications would include the ISO 4001, which looks into environmental management systems, and the OHSAS 18001, which looks into industrial safety and health management system. The second type of enterprises would be the sort of companies that are operating more so in the domestic markets with not as much as with not as much regulatory and compliance requirements because they're competing domestically and they have lower interest in environmental safety, which but these are the companies that could benefit from all the improvements that that technological advancement could bring to their businesses, and that is how more efficient enterprises would emerge as leading competitors in their business cycles. But the third type is the sort of low profit and loss making enterprises who are in very unstable financial position, with environmental expenditure being one of their lowest priorities. But these are also enterprises that could benefit a lot from environmental expenditure because it would bring about a lot of uh, economic and business impacts for these organizations. And as you can see in this chart, here on the right side, we have the groups A, B, and C. And in group A, there are the production petroleum producers, which they spend about 0.5% of their total production value on environmental expenditure, but they also export 78.4. And as we see in this chart, there's a correlation between how much of its products a company ships to other countries and exports with how much of their revenue they spend on environmental expenditure.
So for the last part of our presentation, we're going to look at some practical takeaways of the paper. So firstly, we see that there's an increased technogenic stress, which increases significance of environmental components of the production process itself. Secondly, we know that industries should allocate resources to production greening for environmental safety and sustainability. And thirdly, it is observed that industries that implement production greening also face pseudo-environmental phenomena, which contracts production greening efforts themselves. So for the second part, we can see that there's a strong financial mechanisms that improve the profitability of environment-friendly industries, and these are crucial for achieving greener production overall. We also know that European and CIS countries showcase most of these characteristics compared to the base area, which is the Republic of Dagestan. After measuring environmental stress and expenditure on green production in the USA, the paper draws some conclusions as well. So it is seen that there's a weak positive relationship between expenditure on environmental protection and green production, and improvement in environmental safety and quality is seen as well. So now we can see that assessing measures and expenditures for environmentally friendly production in Russia reveals that there's no significant investment on environmentally friendly production in the last years in Russia. There are no positive changes in financing and environmental modernization for production industries. Expenditures on environmental safety in the Russian GDP has seen a decline in the last years. And lastly, there are no effective mechanisms and incentives for promoting production greening. So now we can look at some of the main criterions for interest in production greening enterprises the paper draws. So levels of financial stability are very important for this, as well as self-sufficiency. We also look at market orientation based on external or internal markets. So this is more like exporting or domestic markets, and also export-oriented. So from this, we can draw that export-oriented industries invest more in green technologies, which the paper states the reason as foreign consumer pressure. So basically, the foreign countries' consumers require more greener production, and they buy these products based on how green the production they are. So basically, the factor of green production has an effect on the consumer's decision on buying products in these markets. And lastly, we see that domestic markets are behind in terms of investment in green technologies, and this is kind of tied to the low incentive levels in domestic markets for this green technologies.
Well, thank you for listening to our presentation.